Welcome back to CBC News BC. I am Jessica Chung here in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. Lots on the go, so let's get you caught up on your top stories. Homicide investigators have identified the victim that was found dead in a burned out house in Surrey earlier this week. Now, it happened on Monday in the area of 127th Street and 56th Avenue when police were initially called for reports of a house fire. 27-year-old Nassim Mohammed was found dead inside the home. Police say that he was known to them and believed to be associated with the BC gang conflict. Now, this is one of two suspicious deaths that happened in the city just this week. The body of a man was found yesterday just after noon in the 3500 block of 176th Street. Now, he was suffering from what appeared to be gunshot wounds and died at the scene. A short time later, police found a vehicle on fire in the area of 189th Street and 40th Avenue. And police would like to hear from anyone with dash cam video showing anything suspicious from either of the two crime scenes. And staying in Surrey, there has been another overnight shooting that police say appears to be linked to the ongoing extortion cases in the city. Now, police say shots were fired at a business in the Newton neighborhood. It happened at around 2 o'clock this morning in the 8000 block of King George Boulevard. Now, Surrey police say that no one was at the business when the shooting happened, so there were no injuries, though there was damage to the storefront.
We understand that it is concerning for the community. This is an issue that obviously impacts not only the victims, but the broader community. So this is something that we've taken very serious from the start, and we do have dedicated teams investigating the offenses, but we also have overt and covert resources that we deploy nightly in an attempt to deter any future incidences.
Now, he says so far this year, Surrey police have received 16 reports of extortion-related incidents. And a commercial truck has hit an overpass in Surrey, causing delays on Highway 1. Now, this happened just before 9:30 this morning in the eastbound lanes at the 192 overpass. Now, witnesses told police that they saw a truck hit the overpass while towing an excavator on a flat deck trailer. And police say that there is visible damage to that overpass, and crews are working to make sure that the roadway is safe. And police are now investigating and say drivers should expect delays in the area. Now to Burnaby. The province's police watchdog has been called after a person died last night. Police tape is still up in this neighborhood near Oxford Street and North Gilmore Avenue. The Independent Investigations Office of BC confirmed that the death happened near there, but the agency has not given any more details about the incident. Now, last night, police cruisers lined the street there, and one neighbor described what he witnessed when the incident happened.
I was walking through down Carlton, and I heard one of the officers say to another officer that there's some kind of a special unit coming, get out of the way. And so he did so. And then I came in the house, and my wife said, "Oh, I heard 2 shots, bang, bang." And then it went quiet, and then it was, cop vehicles everywhere.
Now, the IIO is a civilian-led agency responsible for looking into police incidents that result in death or serious harm. And that's it for me. You are watching CBC News BC. Stay tuned for more continuous local coverage. We're going to have all of that for you and much more. I am Jessica Chung. Don't go anywhere because BC Today is up next.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. At 1 o'clock, Health Minister Josie Osborne will update people on what's next for BC's decriminalization pilot set to end this month. We'll bring that to you live on our website, cbc.ca/BC, as well as CBC Gem and on YouTube. Up first, there have been 3 homicides south of the Fraser in the span of 1 week. Are you concerned about the violence already this year? And what draws people to gangs? After 12:30, we'll talk about careers and ask, is pursuing skilled trades the way of the future? I'm Michelle Elliott. Welcome to BC Today. You can call us now on our top story. How concerned are you about the level of violence we're seeing already this year? And what draws people to gang activity? Our number is 604-669-3733, 604-669-3733, or 1-800-825-5950. We're also taking your emails to bctoday@cbc.ca and your comments on our TikTok Live. Yes, there have been 3 suspicious deaths south of the Fraser in 1 week. We'll talk about the first one just overnight. Surrey police suspect an overnight shooting in the city is linked to ongoing incidents of extortion. Police say shots were fired at a business in the Newton neighborhood. Happened about 2 this morning in the 8,000 block of King George Boulevard. Surrey police say there was damage to a business, but no one was injured. Sergeant Teague Pollock says in the first 2 weeks of this year, the SPS is investigating 16 cases of extortion, and more officers than ever are being dedicated to these files.
You know, there are more officers investigating these type of extortions now, I think, than any other time in Canada. There's, the RCMP has a national task force. Certainly we have the BC Extortion Task Force that is headed up by the RCMP. And we in the Surrey Police Service and some of the surrounding jurisdictions have dedicated in-house investigators. So the issue is being worked on by multiple parties at multiple levels. And so we understand that it is concerning for the community. This is an issue that obviously impacts not only the victims, but the broader community. So this is something that we've taken very serious from the start. And we do have dedicated teams investigating the offenses, but we also have overt and covert resources that we deploy nightly in an attempt to deter any future instances and interdict them when they do happen.
Now, meanwhile, the Integrated Homicide Investigation Team is looking into another homicide in Surrey. The body of a man was found just after noon yesterday in the 3500 block of 176th Street. He was suffering from what appeared to be gunshot wounds and died at the scene. And police are also investigating after the body of a man was found Monday in a burned-out home in the area of 127th Street and 56th Avenue in Surrey. As you heard in the news, 27-year-old Nassim Mohammed was found dead inside the home. Police say he was known to them and is believed to be associated with the BC gang conflict. Last week as well, another fatal shooting in Abbotsford, this time on Friday. And while the first case I mentioned is suspected to be extortion, investigators suspect these homicides were gang-related. Now, as the cases are piling up, we are asking you, how concerned are you about this level of violence we're seeing already this year? And what do you think draws people into gang life? How can they be deterred? You can call us now, 604-669-3733. 604-669-3733, 1-800-825-5950. You can email bctoday@cbc.ca or leave a comment on TikTok. My guest right now is Wade Deisman. He's a current SFU Associate Professor of Criminology, the former director of the National Security Working Group in Ottawa, and he has experience in violence trends, prevention, and public safety policy. Wade, welcome back to the show. Good to speak with you.
Good to be with you. Just to clarify, UFE, as you said SFU, I just want to...
My apologies. Yes, that's right. University of the Fraser Valley, which is indeed why we called you, given your location there. My apologies for that error there.
No problem.
Would you mind, what goes through your mind hearing these numbers then coming out of south of the Fraser as we start 2026?
Well, certainly mounting concern, mounting anxiety, and I think a developing feeling of powerlessness around these kinds of things. So, I've been keeping an eye on the social media posting sites on Reddit, and there's a thread that's developing on Reddit around these issues, and people trying to kind of get support from each other and asking about how they're being affected, how they're feeling, that kind of concern being expressed there. And also anecdotally, a couple of outreaches from folks in Abbotsford, residents concerned about their kids being approached by gangs, by members of gangs to try to recruit. So I think that, we're really seeing a swelling sea tide in terms of the extortion crimes and the kind of the fears in the public about that, and increasingly a question about whether and to what extent the police are really able to respond to this. So communities starting to look inward now to say, how can we respond?
Wow. Can you help keep things in perspective for us? I mean, it does seem alarming, absolutely. Overall, what do the stats tell us about violent crime?
Well, of course, we know that this is a real spike in terms, especially in terms of extortion, but in terms of the gun-related crime as well. I think the report from last year was over 100 reports of cases in Surrey, and roughly 50 reported in Abbotsford, and a significant proportion of these involving firearms. So part of the call in terms of response is for more careful and close regulation around firearms, and that's another conversation in and of itself. But the key thing that I really want to underscore and emphasize that is that in relation to extortion-related crime, we always say that the dark figure is probably 2 to 3 times as much, because extortion-related crime comes with a threat to the victims of the crime that if you report, there will be retaliation. And so my, supposition in these cases is that there's far more going on beneath the surface that folks especially in the Indo-Canadian communities, which are, of course, are the ones that are being targeted here, are not reporting. So there's a lot more that we're not hearing about.
So when it comes to response then, I mean, how do you, there, as you were mentioning, there are the two streams here, the concerns around extortion cases, gang activity as well. What kind of response should we be looking for here from officials?
Well, there's been a development just in the past few days around the revelation about the RCMP having received, codified intelligence, and the RCMP coming to the conclusion that this isn't a kind of natural crime that's occurring in these communities, that there's a strong basis to believe that it's being supported, that it's surrogate, what we call surrogate or proxy crime, supported by the Indian government. And I think so that there is a whole kind of international affairs dimension to this that has to be pursued. And I think, it's been pretty clear that, Canada is trying to, engage in a balancing act between its interest in having economic ties to India and at the same time advancing in terms of this issue. And I think that though that performative contradiction is having consequences for everyone, so there needs to be some coherence and remedy on that front. On the home front, I think, the police have to acknowledge and be forthright about the fact that they need the community to be part of the solution. Making communities resilient, resistant, and defiant to these kinds of things is a longer term process. It's partially about prevention. It's also about interdiction. It's also about reporting. And so partnering up with the communities rather than simply saying we're going to protect you is the approach that's been shown to work in all kinds of other cases. And I'm thinking particularly after 9/11, many communities felt threatened, and campaigns like "We Are Not Afraid," right?
My guest is Wade Deisman, who is Associate Professor of Criminology, a criminologist at the University of the Fraser Valley. And we're taking your calls on this. Just let us know how you're feeling about this spate, the number of cases that we've already been seeing just at the start of the year. And again, 3 cases of homicide in a week, and suspected ties to to a gang activity, and a case that is also suspected to be extortion as well. So we're taking your calls on that. And what draws people into the gang life? 604-669-3733, 1-800-825-5950. And you can just hit pound 690 as well on your cell phone. Bill is calling us now from Delta. Hi, Bill.
Hi. I'm sorry to sound cynical, but to answer your first question, this should be the obvious no-brainer to everybody. One simple word: money.
In terms of what draws people to gang activity?
Obviously.
So
there cannot be any other answer to that. Really, there can't be.
Okay, and so given that, I mean, if you're looking at young people, the victim in this in one of these cases was a 27-year-old, known to police, believed to be associated with a BC gang conflict. How do you address that then with young people?
Well, 27 is not that young, and in my opinion, I had a police officer tell me that a 12 or 13 to 14-year-old can be charged as an adult.
Well, we just heard Wade as well say, people are concerned that their kids may get approached, right, to join a gang. I want to ask you, Bill, you live in Delta. What's it like for you to hear the news, or what have you observed?
Well, hearing the news personally, I've not observed much. But let me say that it is a whole different world south of the Fraser. It really is. As I lived in Vancouver for several decades, as I just said, I mean, it really, really is. And, the crime stats all have been supporting that for decades and decades. Demographic, it really,
Yeah, it sounds like, certainly things sounding very concerning for you in terms of what you've observed there, Bill. Thank you very much for the call from Delta. My guest is Wade Deisman as we take your calls here, and we're going to go to another guest in just a moment who does specialize in talking to kids about the dangers of gang life. What do you make of that then? You talked about the concerns parents can have, concerns in the community, Wade. What can be done to deter youth from getting involved in organized crime?
Yeah, well, let me say that I think, Bill is right that that greed is one of the motivations, but we know that there are multiple pathways. We know that bullying early in life can affect one's susceptibility to joining a gang. So sometimes people join gangs for fear of their own safety. That's why I was talking about being intimidated into joining. And so,
Right.
and so taking the kind of bloom off the rose, which we've done in BC, I think in a very, very competent way. The program was called End Gang Life. I think it's still running actually, but just demystifying and showing that joining a gang is not a panacea. It actually leads to a great deal more misery and often enslavement, in the sense that you become beholden to your political or criminal masters and that kind of thing. So that's part of it, is a public education campaign. But there isn't a magic bullet or a silver bullet in terms of, keeping people out of gangs, other than the usual ones, which is about parenting. It's about family. It's about recreation. It's about community. We know that recreation programs, for example, can make youth much more resilient and resistant to gangs. We know that education plays a role. So all of those things, the social fabric that binds us together, those are the answers.
I have a question here, and I think this may be something for you to respond to, Wade, and if you don't mind holding the line here. Ernesto is joining us from Vancouver. You have a question regarding this, Ernesto. Go ahead.
Well, I'd like to know what kind of background checks people or the police are doing, and on generally speaking, like immigrants and everyone else, like in schools, for instance, we don't know who is who in every school. You send your kid to any school, and you don't know who's his schoolmates are. You know what I mean? And we could be dealing with all kinds of situations there. And also, the second part of my question is, you got all these kids now playing video games like Grand Theft Auto, for instance, and then they go and pretend to be like they live in a utopia world nowadays, all in the internet and everything. But anyways, thank you for your show. You have a great show. Thank you.
Ernesto, thank you so much for the questions. Yes, when it comes to criminal backgrounds, I mean, is that generalizing there? But what do you make from that? Take from that question?
Well, I think that I worry that there's a kind of conflation there between a kind of, people coming from immigrant backgrounds and then involved in criminality or some sort. That kind of thing. I don't really see the schools themselves as a hotbed for gang activity. Certainly targeted recruiting in the school context is possible. But background checks, that kind of thing, that's really, out of the remit of the school system per se. The school has a duty of care, of course, to be, vigilant in terms of that kind of activity. And, we still do have the police officers in schools in some areas and that kind of thing. But, to go to the other question about, the role of video games, I think, there is, ample evidence to suggest that the kind of glorification and glamorization of that kind of life is one of the factors that we need to work on as a society. I think there's still some kind of sense that there's kind of prestige associated with this, and certainly in terms of social capital and social status in the teenage years and in the early 20s, that kind of way of thinking about things, those kinds of social norms still tend to have quite a sway.
Wade, always good to speak with you. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Wade Deisman, criminologist at the University of the Fraser Valley. He joined us from Abbotsford. And we are taking your calls. How concerned are you about the number of cases we're seeing so far when it comes to violent incidents and homicides south of the Fraser? And what is it that draws people into gang life? And asking that question so we can talk about deterrence. In fact, my next guest can address that too. Kal Dosanjh is the CEO of KidsPlay Youth Foundation in Surrey, and he works directly with young people at risk of gang involvement across the Lower Mainland. Hi, Kal. Good to talk to you again.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me on your show.
Thank you. So when you hear those kinds of, theories around kids being recruited at schools, the draw of money, the allure, and as well, the I guess, desensitization from playing video games. And what goes through your mind there?
If we take a look at the drug economy and the gang economy around the rest of the world, whether that's the barrios in Los Angeles or the projects in New York, we're not talking about the same formula here. Normally, the correlation has always been that those kids that come from lower socioeconomic backgrounds end up in the gang life because it is lucrative and that's their only escape from poverty. However, if you take a look at most of the high-profile gangsters in Vancouver, they come from extremely well-to-do families. As a matter of fact, the leaders of one of the gangs lived on the west end of Vancouver in a $10 million home. They had been afforded all the luxuries of life by their parents and could have been sent to private schools and obtained higher educations. However, that was not their goal. They realized that they wanted the Scarface romanticized lifestyle, which came with intimidation, violence, and power. And so it's a different dynamic and paradigm that's being played out here. And granted, whether it's video games or music videos, I think those have always been one of the variables in the equation with respect to tainting or deviating kids into that lifestyle. But I don't think that in and of itself is the sole reason. There's multiple cultural, socioeconomic, and sociological factors that are involved in pushing kids into that lifestyle.
So you've said, prevention starts much earlier. We heard about the role of parenting earlier in this half hour as well. So what does that real prevention look like?
Real prevention looks like, unfortunately, in the South Asian demographic, which I belong to, I can personally attest to and tell you anecdotally that, unfortunately, in our culture, the majority of the South Asian families come from the state of Punjab back in India, and they experienced a tremendous amount of systemic corruption in the criminal justice system. And so there is a lack of trust with the police forces, with the criminal justice agencies. And so they carried that over, and that's translated here. And so what I mean by that is that a lot of times in the South Asian community, anytime one of their kids is dealing with the drug and gang scene, or they personally are dealing with some kind of serious criminal matter, they'll sweep it underneath the rug because they don't want to get the police involved. And they don't want word to get out there because of the shame and sense of honor that comes with the community. Sorry, go ahead.
My apologies. Interesting, because Wade talked about partnerships with communities as well. So what kind of partnerships, what kind of outreach needs to happen then?
You will not believe the number of parents that approach me, even though they know I'm an active duty law enforcement officer, but approach me in the capacity of KidsPlay and explicitly and specifically say to me, we do not want to get police involved. We want to keep our kids on the right track, but we are afraid of the legal ramifications and consequences of getting police involved. And so unfortunately, there is plenty of South Asian businessmen that have paid out in these extortions because they don't want to get anybody else involved, and they don't want the word to get out there that they are being extorted. So I think there was a very salient, resonating point that was brought up earlier in your interview by the professor, that the statistics are based on the numbers that we know of. How many don't we know of?
Yeah.
And so these are things to take into consideration.
My guest is Kal Dosanjh, CEO of KidsPlay Youth Foundation in Surrey. Our TV audience, you're going to get an ad break in just a moment here. We'll see you back here in 2 minutes. Right now, as I have Kal on the line, let's take a call from Bill in Vancouver. And Bill, you wanted to talk about, I guess, the crime and justice part of it. Go ahead.
Well, in Canada, we have our people that have firearms here, and we have rules we have to follow. And one of them is, if you don't obey the law, and one of them is you get caught with a firearm and you're using it, and whether you have a license or not, I think the minimum is 5 years imprisonment. Now, I could be wrong, but that's what I recall, and that's a pretty big deterrent. And it seems it's one of those things that is plea bargained away. Those sorts of things shouldn't be plea bargained away. Now, when it comes to, the people that are being, I guess, highlighted in this gun violence, and I don't want to sound like I'm a racist, but it's the South Asian Indo-Canadians that seem to be, at the forefront of it. And they come from a very different social background when it comes to India and Canada. I mean, it was, and I don't know what it's there like now, but go ahead.
No, go ahead, Bill. And that's something that we've just heard Kal talk about, right? When it comes to that kind of trust, lack of trust in institutions as well. But you go ahead and finish your point.
Yeah, it's not the lack of trust of the institutions that I'm leading on. It's the way that the male is so violent and so overbearing over their partners, their wives or whatever. It's just not the same here. But, just recently there was some woman that was stabbed multiple times by her husband, who recently arrived from another part of the planet, which is India. And my feeling is that if somebody's going to do those sorts of crimes, and they should be, do the crime, pay the time, but also send them back to where they came from and
Bill,
not allow them in Canada.
Thank you for the call, Bill. So, Kal, you talked about that lack of trust in institutions. He's talking there about, is there a cultural norm or gender norms, perhaps, that play a role as well?
Well, I'm not going to get into gender norms. We're talking about apples and oranges here. I'm not going to paintbrush the entire South Asian community. However, statistically speaking, I'm sure that the South Asian demographic or ethnic community plays a significant role in the drug and gang scene, and which is true, which we've seen over the years. And so, but I'm going to allude to an interesting point for your sake and for the listener's sake. If we go back to the Bindi Johal era, Bindi Johal was considered the Scarface of the South Asian community back in the day, and the initial epicenter of South Asian gang crime. And so that's where South Asian gang crime initially started taking off. But if we take a look at the cultural factors that were involved back then, some of the reasons that were relayed by the Dosanjh brothers or Bindi Johal or some of the high-profile South Asian gang members back in the day was that they were dealing with a significant amount of racism when they initially immigrated to Canada. And so as a result of that, they banded together. And that was a coping mechanism to deal with the racism, and it was a survival mechanism. However, they realized that that mechanism, through intimidation, violence, and force, is remarkably effective, and we can utilize it as a tool and an instrument to make money. And so that's how they got involved in the drug trade. And it has been carrying on ever since. But what I'm seeing with the next generation of South Asian gangsters now, or gangsters in particular, it doesn't matter which background they're from, it is getting remarkably more violent. And so,
Kal, I'm hoping to ask you more about the stigmatization that the South Asian community may feel when there is news around gang activity. I really want to ask you that. Are you okay to hang on with us for another 4 minutes?
Of course, yeah.
Would that be okay? Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure that we get to that question with you. Certainly would appreciate your perspective on that. This is BC Today here on CBC. I'm Michelle Elliott, and we'll go back to Kal Dosanjh to tackle that part of it. He just talked about racism, and we'll talk about that issue as well. And then after that, we'll discuss the rise in skilled trades jobs and take your calls on that if you're pursuing a skilled trade. And coming up at 1 o'clock, of course, we'll carry for you live on our visual platforms, the press conference by the health minister regarding decriminalization in BC. Right now it is 12:33. Let's pause for a CBC News update. And here's Rob Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. The RCMP are warning of delays along Highway 1 in Surrey after an overpass was struck by a truck. Witnesses say the commercial vehicle hit the overpass at 192nd Street while towing an excavator on a flatbed trailer. BC Highway Patrol is investigating, and the province will examine the overpass to ensure it is safe for travel. BC's Police Oversight Agency is investigating after a deadly incident involving officers last night in Burnaby. Few details have been released, but the RCMP say they responded to a call on Oxford Street at about 8 o'clock. The victim's name has not been released. And Surrey police are investigating what's believed to be yet another extortion incident. Several shots were fired at a Newton business at around 2 o'clock this morning. Nobody was hurt. Surrey police have already responded to 16 reports of extortion since the beginning of the year. And now the forecast on the north coast. Cloudy this afternoon with a high of 8. Highs around 9 with strong winds and some sunshine in the Peace. In the central interior, including Prince George, sunny with a high of 8 degrees. Highs from 2 to 6 and cloudy this afternoon in the Kootenays. In the southern interior, including Kelowna, a mix of sun and cloud with a chance of drizzle and a high of 6. And some sun and cloud this afternoon in Greater Victoria, a chance of drizzle in Metro Vancouver and the Fraser Valley with highs around 10. That's your CBC News update from Vancouver.
Thank you so much, Rob. That's Rob Zimmerman in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. You're with BC Today. We have been discussing the number of cases so far already, 3 homicides south of the Fraser, and the possible links to gang activity. And in a case on Monday, the victim was a 27-year-old Nasim Muhammad, who was known to police, according to police, and believed to be associated with a BC gang conflict. We have been asking what draws people to gang activity. My guest has been Kal Dosanjh, CEO of the KidsPlay Youth Foundation in Surrey. And Kal, and so you were talking about, the roots of getting involved in gangs, the racism that people have faced perhaps upon arrival, and how that can lead to kind of banding together. So when there's news like this, and you hear things like, like our caller saying, go back to where you came from and that kind of thing, how concerned are you about that, as you said, painting everyone with the same brush and the kind of stigma that a community can face?
You know what? Unfortunately, this has become extremely pervasive and is permeating the social fabric of our community. And the reason why I say that is because people are fed up and people are frustrated. And they're seeing a lot of South Asian gangsters that are involved in lifestyle. And even with respect to extortions, it's a lot of South Asian businessmen. So unfortunately, in the mainstream community, they end up painting the entire South Asian community the same way. It's like, go back to where you came from. Well, we're born here. The majority of us are. And so our parents came here and they worked tremendously hard to make ends meet, work 2-3 jobs, just like any other immigrant that would come to this country. But unfortunately, there's plenty of immigrants that have come to this country that have taken advantage of the legal system and that are using it for nefarious purpose or conducting nefarious activities. And what I'm essentially referring to, I've received information from plenty of sources that it was organized crime elements out of India that came here through the portal or the guise as international students to come here and then conduct their illicit activity, which included extortion. So the problem here is that when you have a caller that's calling in and saying, send them back, they're saying, okay, sure, arrest us, send us back, deport us. It's okay, because they know there is no legal ramifications or consequences for their actions, but there is. And so they will be arrested, they will be charged, they will have to experience the full brunt of the criminal justice system. And once they've served their time, then they will be sent back. And whether there is fear or intimidation of that repercussion, only they know. But unfortunately, this is the dynamic that's being played out in the community at this moment.
Kal, always good to speak with you. I really appreciate your addressing these questions. Thank you for your time.
My absolute pleasure.
Kal Dosanjh is CEO of KidsPlay Youth Foundation. It is 12:37 now. You're with BC Today. Yesterday, we talked about childcare in BC and specifically $10 a day daycare, and that really struck a chord with you. Here's an email from Lutaf in Burnaby. He writes, I'm a granddad with 2 grandchildren who are now teenagers. They received early childcare, partly from their aunt, and then we're lucky to get admission into daycares. But we knew 7 years ago this new $10 a day program was bound to have very limited benefits. To get into that program is like winning a lottery. The prospect of this program expanding is dim because of limited government finance, shortage of qualified and good teachers, and lack of interest on the part of many owners of daycares. Let us be more realistic. Last BC budget did not provide any additional funding for this program. We can expect the same in the future. There are already 2 other BC government programs in place. The Affordable Childcare Benefit is income tested. The Childcare Fee Reduction Initiative is not. These 2 benefits can be combined to get greater savings. If $10 daycare continues, it's high time it becomes an income-tested program so parents with sufficient income to afford daycare can come off the wait lists and give room to families who deserve to benefit more. Perhaps the Coalition of Childcare Advocates of BC could work with the province on improvements rather than expansion, which the BC government can't afford. Thanks for your email. bctoday@cbc.ca. Over the rise of AI to businesses clawing back due to tariffs, job uncertainty has beset many British Columbians. Some argue, though, that one beacon of hope is the skilled trades. The BC government has announced $241 million to expand skilled trades training, saying over 100,000 skilled trades jobs are coming to BC within the next decade. According to the head of the Construction Foundation of BC, skilled tradespeople will be, quote, the last ones voted off the island, arguing that ability to use your hands, it will always be needed. So we're asking you, is 2026 the year to learn a skilled trade? Are you considering pursuing one yourself as a career? Call us now, just hit pound 690 on your cell phone or dial 825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can email bctoday@cbc.ca. You can also comment on our TikTok Live. Joining me now is Anna Lary to take your calls. She's an electrical instructor at BCIT. Good afternoon. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for your patience waiting for this segment. So tell me, why is now the time to pick up a trade?
Well, first, I just wanted to talk a little bit more about myself.
Yeah, yes.
So I'm a master electrician. I've been teaching at BCIT for the past 13 years, and I'm very involved in advocacy. So I have a center supporting the retention and advancement of women and gender diverse skilled trades workers. So I kind of am looking not just at the recruitment piece, but at the retention piece. And I really want to talk about all the amazing benefits, bursaries, taxation advantages that are available to skilled trades workers as they pursue their education.
What's it been like for you?
Well, it's been a wild ride. I've been in the trades for 28 years, and I love electrical work. It's an embodied practice, making things. That feeling when you have a good day, when it all comes together, your body knows what to do, your mind knows what to do, and you're in a flow state. This also can be very challenging work, even painful, working outside in all weathers, having things not go well. And then there's issues with bullying and harassment as well in the trades. Yeah.
Well, that's just it. And so, of course, there are specific issues when it comes to women in trades as well. So what have been the challenges there, and how far have we come in terms of addressing them?
Well, we represent only about 5.2% of the skilled trades workforce when you take out occupations like chef or hairdresser. So we've got a long way to go, but we're making a lot of traction. So women in trades are very connected now. We're supporting each other, we're networking, and we're really enjoying each other. So things are changing. And I feel we also really recognize that we need to elevate the trades for everybody. Mental health is an issue in the trades. I'm talking about a lot of the negative things.
Yes, I was going to say we're supposed to be talking about why people should go into the trades, but these are issues. These are real issues.
They're issues.
Yeah.
But I love being an electrician. It's been a terrific career for me. And I want other people to come into the trades. There's some really significant, interesting opportunities as we address climate change, as we deal with the situation with our neighbors to the south. Prime Minister Mark Carney's significant investment in our infrastructure. So 116 billion, I think, for 13 major projects. 6 of them will be in BC. So that is a huge amount of work for trades workers.
Right. And because of that, the BC government is expanding investment in trades as well. We're going to take some calls here asking you what is your plan when it comes to skilled trades? Are you considering pursuing a skilled trade in BC as a career? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. So then, given all of those challenges, even notwithstanding them or keeping them in consideration, what do you think makes skilled trades a way to go, a viable career path right now?
So work is changing. We have AI, we have all this kind of automation of processes that we couldn't have imagined that would be automated in the way they are now. But what's not changing is that we still need skilled trades workers to build and make and diagnose, problem-shoot things. We're kind of like the last bastion, maybe.
I think the last to be voted off the island was the quote from the. And do you see that? I mean, it's hard to imagine that all of it will not be ignored. Will be ignored against AI. I mean, how will AI affect?
We are using AI in the trades.
Oh, you're all yes. I can imagine. Sure.
Yeah. Like if you want to do estimations to figure out how much it's going to cost you to install something, if you want to do layout. If you want to track your jobs and bill, all of the AI is creeping into all of that, and it's fabulous. Plus, we have amazing power tools now. Power tools we never had when I started out.
Okay.
And those are a lot of fun, I have to say.
So you're saying it's fabulous. So
Yeah.
you welcome it.
I do, yeah.
But what does it mean for jobs?
For skilled trades workers, it's actually great. It lets us do our job better,
Right. But
more accurately.
will it at some point risk your job?
It's possible. Like what I know is that work will change. So
being adaptable is important.
yeah, to be a trade worker, you need to be adaptable and resilient anyway. So I think it makes sense to embrace the technology. So if you can use these tools to have better layout, so you lose less money because of errors. If you can use these tools as a small business person to make your workflow more efficient, why not?
So in that regard, it's very much like other industries right now. Then,
Yeah, but we still need people to do
you
the
always.
things.
What do you say to your students? What do you say to your students, Anna?
Well, my big message actually for tradespeople generally is the importance of social connection, networking, to access resources. So for apprentices, there's a lot of incentives to stay in that trades pathway, and they miss them a lot of the time. So a great way for them to connect with resources is to connect with each other and to connect with that person who's doing all the things, has the grants, is accessing Apprentice EI, has access support from, say, Construction Foundation of British Columbia or Work BC. There's tons of organizations out there that want to help you. So when you're entering the trade, it's really great to be aware of those resources.
Okay, so things to look for.
Yeah.
Let's take a call now. We're asking you, are you considering pursuing a skilled trade this year? Is 2026 the year of the skilled trade? We've just heard about the challenges that you still face and the need to be adaptable, but the fact that working with your hands is always going to be important. So I want to hear from you. 604-669-3733, 1-800-825-5950. And Hillary is joining us from Vancouver. Hi there, Hillary.
Hi there.
Let us know, do you work in trades?
I do.
Okay.
Hi, Anna Lary.
Hey there.
All right. So how do you know each
You know
other?
what this is. Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Anna's doing amazing work at BCIT. The whole Women in Trades program with Tamara is also doing amazing work, I have to say. I was a Boilermaker for 22 years. I came into the trades after having completed an undergraduate degree and a master's degree in arts at UBC in Massachusetts. So it's not something that people are just falling into anymore. It's a conscious decision that people are making because they realize the benefits. And I have to tell you that with all my fancy education and arts degrees, I was working in youth care, making $5 an hour. That's what it was. It was $120 for a 24-hour shift in a group home. And now I have 2 houses. So, if you want to know what the benefits are. But the reason I wanted to call in is because I really struggle with this idea that the educational, the BCIT and the other vocational schools are doing a fantastic job providing incentives, providing grants, and it's there. The infrastructure is there for people who want to go into the trades. It's not a recruitment issue anymore. It's a retention issue.
Retention.
And I know among women, it's over 80% attrition rate. And one of the reasons for that is that promises are held out for how terrific it is, and it's glamorous, and you're gonna make all this money, and it's gonna be fabulous. And the flip side isn't explained adequately to the apprentices. So apprentices' expectations, I think, going in are sometimes very bright and shiny, and a little reality check is sometimes in order. But also the companies, the contractors, and the companies need to understand what a safe and respectful workplace is.
What needs to change then? What do companies need to do, Hillary? I mean, you've had this wonderful career. What do you think they should be doing to keep women and retain women in the industry?
Well, it's not just women; it's anybody, right? Everybody deserves a respectful workplace, no matter what your gender or age or race or any of those things. So this became very clear with me when I turned 50, and I switched careers from being on the tools to being a boiler inspector for the provincial safety authority, which has an incredibly respectful workplace. I work with a really diverse group of people, and there's a culture that where everybody flourishes, and respect, diversity, inclusion are all conscious value decisions that company is making. On a construction site, the culture is just it's different, right? It's different. It's everything that you could imagine it to be. How about if I just say?
Why don't okay, Hillary, thank you. What is the culture that needs to change on the construction site? I don't know if you can address that from your perspective.
So there's issues on job sites. There's behavior that's tolerated on many job sites that wouldn't be tolerated in any other workplace. So the kind of bullying and harassment is a real thing. I have to say this, but not all employers. The nice thing about networking is we can find out who we should be working for. We can make choices about our employment and go to those employers who do provide a respectful workplace. So
word of mouth.
I'm still in touch with some of the journeymen who taught me. We have this wonderful, positive relationship, but I also had to deal with a lot of jerks, and I had to be very strong about this. And part of why I started the BCIT Connect Her Hub was to really connect people with the resources to help them not just survive, but to thrive in the skilled trades. And it's my long-term goal to extend those benefits to men as well. I just kind of feel like I'm triaging. Women and gender diverse people are really suffering on job sites.
That's quite the initiative.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's take another call here now from Kyle in North Vancouver. And Kyle, you actually say that it's not the best time to go into construction right now. Is that right?
Depends what field you're going in. If you're going into new construction, it's definitely not, because I've been doing it since 2001, and I rarely see people get laid off, except for around 2009. In the past year here, I've seen tons of people get laid off.
Wow.
We have 3 of our head contracting companies that we do. They're massive companies in BC. They laid off 30% of their office staff, and they canceled a bunch of their projects. So it's getting a little tougher. The guys that have skill will definitely stay employed, but the guys that kind of don't show up on Monday, show up late and stuff like that, they're definitely getting canned all over the place.
I agree. Construction is shifting. We are moving away from residential's just been going pell-mell for years now. And now we're having a contraction there. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what plays out with our major projects. So there's, like Kyle said, it's going to depend what occupation you're in.
Right.
So there's tremendous opportunities with BC Hydro and utilities now. They had $36 billion in their capital plan from 2024 to 2034 before these major projects were announced.
So interesting. And I mean, we've been talking about this every week, right? The slowdown in real estate and building, what impact that's going to have trickling down to construction.
Now we're moving into infrastructure building, though, and the nature of that work is going to change. A lot of people are going to be moving to working remotely, building phase 2 of Kitimat LNG, Silicims LNG. There's a lot coming on the industrial side, and those represent amazing jobs with amazing potential for money. But when I was an apprentice, we had to be conscious of the fact that we could get laid off at any moment.
Right.
And it hasn't been like that for a long time, since 2009. Now, construction workers are going to have to just think that you could have gaps in employment, you could have gaps in income earning, and you have to budget accordingly and be strategic about what jobs you take, what employment you're looking for.
Really good to hear from you on that. Let's take one more call here. I have just a couple of minutes left, but Heather is calling from Chilliwack. You're a retired Red Seal painter and decorator, Heather.
I am, and then I went into the career employment services when I was working in the high schools.
Oh, wow.
I think the most important thing is the Ministry of Education has now put experiential learning into its form of career curriculum. And that's what needs to happen. We need to get the young people out there working beside a carpenter, working beside the people that are doing the job so that they get to see it and feel it and know if that's the right fit. Self-assessment is the biggest oversight I've seen, and I worked as a specialist in trades and technology in Northern BC. So.
Heather, that's a really good point to end on. Let's talk about high school students, young people. What do you have to say to them?
So there's two things. One is BCIT already has 250 students a year going through dual credit programs where they finish off the last year of high school and they take a skilled trade. We also do outreach to high schools. More needs to happen. Trades needs to be a first choice, not a second choice. Though I do love my second choice people as well because they really know they want to do this.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Longer road, but they ended up there.
So one of the roadblocks for trade students sometimes is getting into their technical training. We have long wait lists at BCIT. So we have a BCIT's Trade and Technology Complex, which will provide space for 700 students annually. So we're really excited. We're really investing in trades education at BCIT.
Okay.
We're not just resting on our laurels.
and as you say, even if you are getting into skilled trades, no resting on laurels as well. It's about being adaptable.
Continuous education. So I'm a master electrician. I haven't just stopped at being an electrician. If I had, my career would have stagnated. And instead, I have had a really good career that I love.
And now at BCIT as well, I feel as though that actually applies to so many things, right? Yeah. Anna, such a pleasure to meet you and to speak with you. Thank you for your expertise and sharing them with us.
Okay. Come be an electrician. It's awesome.
Anna Lary, an instructor at the electrical program at BCIT. A good class, I would imagine. Very engaging. Thank you so much for your time. This is BC Today, and you're with the CBC. In 2 minutes from now, we'll bring you live the BC Health Minister. And yes, coming up at 1 o'clock, we'll bring you the live press conference from BC Health Minister Josie Osborne, who's talking about the decriminalization pilot program in BC, giving an update there. We'll carry it live for you on our visual streaming platforms. So that's YouTube, CBC Gem, our website as well. If you're watching us on CBC Television or listening on CBC Radio, it will not be on there. So please do join us on our visual streaming platforms. We'll be back with you in about 2 minutes. You're with CBC. I'm Michelle Elliott. We are about to bring you live a press conference with BC's Health Minister, Josie Osborne. Now, she's set to make an announcement about addictions care in BC, but she's also going to provide an update about the status of the province's decriminalization pilot project. 3 years ago, BC started this pilot project, allowing adults to carry up to 2.5 grams of opioids, cocaine, methamphetamine, and ecstasy for personal use without facing charges. This was in response to the toxic drug crisis. That pilot's set to expire at the end of this month, and the health minister is expected to talk about an update and what will happen to that program after it expires at the end of the month. Let's go live now to Victoria.
And Kim Keats, who's a nurse with Access Central. Also, a shout out to Rika Gustafson, the Chief Medical Officer who's here with us today, and Kathy McNeil, who's the President and CEO of Island Health. And also a shout out to the other Island Health staff that we have here today and people who are working in our health system. Thank you so much for the work you do. I come out of a nonprofit sector where I've worked on with people who have struggled with addictions and issues with substance use, and know how important today's announcements are. I'm so happy we're here in a healthcare setting to do this. I welcome to the podium Josie Osborne to talk about what we're doing today.
Great, thank you. Thanks so much, Diana. It's a real privilege to be here in the Royal Jubilee Hospital, and I want to acknowledge, of course, the privilege it is to be on the territories of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples, the Esquimalt and Songhees nations. I'm Josie Osborne. I'm BC's Minister of Health, and I am grateful to be able to share these words with you today. The toxic drug crisis continues to have an absolutely devastating impact on communities and families across the province. And I certainly have heard heartbreaking stories from family members and friends of people that we have lost to poison drugs, and from first responders and care providers who've tried everything that they can do to save a life. This crisis takes a devastating toll. And because it is such a complex public health emergency, we need to consider every option and tool available to save lives and to help people who are struggling with addiction. In 2023, we launched a pilot program to decriminalize people who use drugs. Our intention was clear: to make it easier for people who are struggling with addiction to come forward and seek help. From the beginning, this pilot was designed as a time-limited trial with ongoing monitoring built in so we could understand what was working, what wasn't, and where changes were needed. However, the pilot hasn't delivered the results that we hoped for. And after very careful consideration, we are not asking the federal government to renew the exemption. I want to take a moment to acknowledge all the tremendous work, the commitment, the expertise that went into this pilot over the last 3 years. Advocates, health authorities, and people who are working on the front lines helped implement the pilot on the ground and contributed significantly to what we've learned. And I also want to sincerely thank the police, who provided essential operational input during the development of the pilot and whose ongoing contributions helped address emerging needs and evolving public safety concerns. Our government remains absolutely committed to exploring every option, to using evidence-informed tools that can save lives and help connect people to care. Our priority has always been, and it continues to be, making it easier for people who are struggling with addiction to get the help they need where and when they need it, because we believe strongly that addiction is a health issue, not a criminal justice issue. That brings us to why we're here today. Today marks another important step in making care easier to reach and easier to navigate. In 2023, the Road to Recovery program was launched at St. Paul's Hospital to support people facing addiction and substance use withdrawal in the Greater Vancouver region. It's an innovative model that's designed to provide a full continuum of care in one coordinated system. It offers assessment, stabilization, treatment, and ongoing supports so people are not left on their own to navigate the system, a complex system. And a key part of the Road to Recovery program is Access Central. It's a phone line that helps adults connect to withdrawal management or detox supports quickly and easily through a single point of access. And today, I am very proud to share that Access Central has expanded and it's now available throughout Island Health, Fraser Health, and Interior Health, with Northern Health coming online later this year. When someone is ready to seek support, they can call Access Central and receive an assessment by phone within 24 hours or be referred to a clinic for an in-person assessment. And from there, Access Central helps connect people to a range of services, and that includes inpatient detox beds, medical withdrawal management and stabilization, and opioid agonist therapy where it's appropriate. We know that this model is making a difference. Access Central Vancouver has received more than 34,000 calls between October 2023 and December 2025. And during that same period, more than 3,500 people were connected to withdrawal management beds. And beyond the initial connection, Access Central stays involved, providing guidance throughout a person's withdrawal and recovery journey, and that ongoing connection is critical. It helps people keep moving forward on their road to recovery, healing, and working through their substance use challenges. And I really want to thank our health authority partners for the incredible work that they do every single day, helping people in their communities access the care and the support that they need when and where they need it most. Access Central is just one part of our government's broader work to build a strong and comprehensive system of mental health and addictions care here in British Columbia. And since 2017, we've invested over $2 billion in mental health and addiction services, and we're seeing meaningful results. Since 2017, we've opened more than 760 new beds that support people with addictions. We're opening involuntary care beds across the province, including at the Surrey Pretrial Services Centre, Alouette Homes, and more spaces opening in Surrey and Prince George. We've reduced wait times for withdrawal management from 26 days down to about 8 days. And we launched the Opioid Treatment Access Line, which connects people with same-day medication and care for opioid use disorder. From October 2024 to September 2025, the line received more than 2,500 calls and provided close to 650 prescriptions to people across BC. Now, at the same time, we know just how important wellness promotion, prevention, and early intervention are at stopping small problems from becoming bigger ones down the road. And that's why we've opened Foundry Centres across the province, providing mental health, substance use, and primary care services to youth. There are 19 Foundry Centres operating today, with 16 more on the way. And we're expanding integrated child and youth teams to ensure that children and families can access the mental health services that they need closer to home. We can never forget that people who are struggling with addictions are our family members, they're our friends, they're our neighbors. And as the toxic drug crisis continues to evolve, our response must evolve with it. We will keep adapting and learning and taking bold steps to help turn the tide of this crisis, while doing everything that we can to help people get the care that they need without fear, stigma, or judgment. To anybody who is listening here today who wants to make that step to help, please reach out. Please visit www.helpstartshere.gov.bc.ca. Just that one click, that one call to Access Central could make all the difference. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Minister Osborne. It is life-changing for somebody who needs care to be able to get timely, compassionate, and effective support to help them on their path to recovery. I'm so proud of the record that Minister Osborne shared with you of what we've been doing to make it easier to access the care, for it to be better coordinated and more responsive to people's needs. Strengthening services across British Columbia, helping to build out that full continuum of care, is helping people to get the support, and so critically, it's for when they need it. Recovery is possible with compassionate care and strong community support. People can be rebuilding their lives and looking forward with hope. So thank you so much, Minister Osborne, for sharing the initiatives we've had and the work that we're continuing to do to ensure that those supports are there. And now I welcome to the podium, Leah.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here with us today. I'll start by acknowledging with respect the traditional and unceded territory of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples, now known as the Songhees and Esquimalt nations, on whose land we gather today. In making this acknowledgement, I commit to walk softly on this land and work to uphold Indigenous self-determination. I also acknowledge the Métis, Inuit, and other First Nations people who live in this region. There is a moment many people in recovery describe, a private, deeply personal turning point when they realize something in their life needs to change. Sometimes that moment comes when they hear someone else's recovery story and think, maybe that could be me. Sometimes it's a parent or caregiver longing for more time, better time with their children. And sometimes it's simply reaching a crossroads, a moment of honesty, vulnerability, and courage when someone decides to reach out for help. We need to be there for them in that moment. When a person takes that step, they shouldn't have to navigate a maze of services or wait days for support. They deserve a system with their bravery and compassion and meets their urgent needs with timely care. Because when someone makes the brave and vulnerable decision to seek help for substance use, they need access to compassionate treatment and care quickly. This is exactly what the new Virtual Access Central service offers. Access Central is more than a phone line, it's a lifeline. It ensures when someone reaches out for help, our care team is ready to provide the support they need and deserve with dignity and respect. By calling one number, people will connect to a dedicated virtual substance use team, including nurses, a counselor, and an addiction medicine physician. People will receive personalized substance use care planning, including same or next day virtual clinical screening, assessment and triage, as well as withdrawal management services. This new service is part of Phase 1 for Road to Recovery at Island Health, marking an important step toward improving substance use care across our region. Together, we have the opportunity to make a real difference, to ensure that when someone reaches out for help, they find hope, compassion, and timely care. Thank you for standing with us on this journey. Your presence today reflects a shared commitment to building a system that truly meets people where they are with dignity and respect.
Thank you so much, Leah. And now I'd like to invite Kim Keats up to the podium, who's going to speak from a frontline worker perspective about the Health Access Central and how it's working to support people seeking support.
Thank you. I am so excited. I am just so excited to be a part of our new virtual substance use team and Access Central. I'm a frontline nurse, and I meet people at their most vulnerable point, most vulnerable moment in their lives. And the hardest part, it's not the assessment and it's not the treatment, it's the moment before that. By the time people reach out and connect with us, many have tried to navigate a system that is just, it's complex and they're all alone often. They have waited, they've been referred or re-referred. They have told their stories so many times. And sometimes they're exhausted before care even starts. I work with people taking that very first step. And I also work with others who have been surviving substance use for many years. What they have in common is this: they reach out. They reach out because it's important to them. And what they have in common when they reach out is that the timing matters, and the clarity matters, and how they are met matters. For people living in rural and remote communities, those moments are often harder. Their distance is a factor, limited social services and limited local services, long waits, and missed windows of care. They can turn their motivation into discouragement, and that can happen so quickly. I've seen how people can fall through the cracks when access is complicated. Access Central was built to meet those realities. From the front line, what changes really, it's simple, but significant. People are not left trying to figure out where to go next. They're not bounced between services. They're connected quickly to someone who can assess, someone who can guide, and someone who can support them right in that moment. It shifts the experience from the challenge of looking for help to being met with it. And that shift is what is so important. Because when someone finds that courage to reach out, they deserve a system that is ready for them. They deserve a system that responds with respect, reduces barriers, and helps them stay connected during their substance use journey. From where I stand, really, Access Central is the right answer for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim, and it's so great to hear that firsthand perspective on the work and the impact that this is having for people. As has been mentioned by a number of the speakers, timeliness for compassionate care and access are so critical, and that's the real difference. I know from stories I've heard already on the South Island here about the impact these programs and our government's investments in the continuum of care are having for people in our community, and I'm really excited to see this program unfold. I'll conclude that concludes this part of the press conference, and now we'll move to questions.
Thank you very much. A reminder to media on the line, if you're there, please press *1 to enter the queue. You'll be limited to a question and a follow-up. We'll start here in the room with Katie DeRosa from the CBC.
Minister, what does the changes mean in practical sense? Will police officers start arresting people again? We know that some police departments, Vancouver Police, already were kind of practicing not charging people for decrim. It was sort of a hodgepodge depending on which department. So will police be directed to charge people, and do you expect Crown to be approving charges for simple possession?
Thanks, Katie. So first of all, the police have been really important partners in this endeavor, and the province does not direct police what to do. However, that relationship has been a really important part of establishing the pilot, of having a relationship throughout the pilot and receiving their ongoing advice and feedback and making the changes that we have. What people can expect to see once the decriminalization pilot ends is they can expect to see the police continue to do the job that they do. And they have, together with the province, I think we are all on the same page when it comes to asserting that we are taking a health-first approach. And that means the police will continue to use the expertise, the judgment, the discretion that they have in dealing with individuals, in making a decision to help them move along, for example, to an overdose prevention site, a place where they are much more likely to be connected to the care that they need and may be actively seeking. Police will continue to work with us, and as we go through this transition, of course, our intention here, and always the intention of the decriminalization pilot, was to shift people out of a criminal justice system, one that can have incredible effects on a person's own sense of dignity, on their employment, on their housing, on their relationships, and be able to connect them with the care in a healthcare system, taking a health-first approach. And that's what we'll continue doing together with the police, supporting each other as we can.
So since BC was a test case for the rest of the country, do you regret going down this path? Like, did decriminalization fail, essentially?
I think it's important, first of all, to acknowledge just how complex this public health emergency is. And second, that the conditions around us are changing all the time. And we have seen, for example, the toxic drug supply itself change with fentanyl coming in, and then carfentanil and veterinary additives and things that are making people sicker and are contributing to deaths. That's why it's so important that we consider and take every chance we can to try something new, using evidence, using data, and again, working together with police, stakeholders, health partners in designing the decriminalization pilot in the first place. This was always a time-limited trial, and we were always clear that we would monitor and evaluate the trial as it went on. And as I said before, not providing the results that we wanted to see. We've made the decision to end the decriminalization pilot, but that in no way changes the work that we're going to continue to do to build out that very strong, that comprehensive, seamless system of care for people. And that's exactly why we're here today. And just hearing directly from Kim to speak to a single point of access for somebody to remove the gaps and barriers and having to manage different wait lists or call different numbers or see different people, but to have that single point of entry, that is truly transformative in a substance use care system. We've seen it and the impact it's making in Vancouver. And that's why I'm just so proud to see that we're expanding that across into different areas of the province.
Thank you very much. Thanks as well to folks on the line who have rejoined. We had a quick drop there. Please do press *1 to enter the queue. You'll be limited to a question and a follow-up. Next question comes from Mary Griffin, Check News.
Minister, just wondering, just to be clear, is it now illegal again to possess cocaine, fentanyl, heroin, meth in any amount?
Yeah, without the exemption in place, previously decriminalizing people who possess small amounts of those substances, 2.5 grams or less. Now we return to the original wording of the CDSA, the federal act. And again, this is only for the exemption that the province was granted by the federal government. It doesn't impact the exemption that is already in place for drug checking sites and for supervised consumption sites. Those are under a separate exemption.
And just to follow up, sorry, just going to my question here. How many people were actually directed into drug treatment and recovery as a result of decrim? And did you measure or track this? And if so, how?
Well, it's a great question, and it's a very challenging one to answer because there are many different programs available for people. There are many different policies and tools that are being used. And one of the challenges is to isolate the impact of any outcome that we're seeing and narrow it to a causal relationship that is attributable to just one thing like decriminalization. We certainly saw that in the initial months of the decriminalization pilot that possession offenses and seizures came down. We see that more people have accessed overdose prevention sites, but it's a challenging system right now to be able to measure direct self-referral or referral into treatment and recovery programs. But again, I just want to come back to the intent here. The intent is to shift people away from a criminal justice system, use a health-first approach, and to help reduce the fear, the judgment, the self-stigma that people have in reaching out for help. And I want people to imagine, somebody who is facing challenges with substance use, who perhaps is living at home with their family and not even their family knows what they're going through. The fear of what can happen in reaching out for help is serious, and it can stop people. Decriminalizing the people who use drugs, always the intent to help make it easier to access supports. And that's why we will stay focused on all of the other work that we are doing to increase people's access to services, to, again, coming back to Access Central and virtual supports, making it easier for people who live in remote communities, for example, so that they can talk to somebody and get on a pathway to recovery that they are looking for.
Next question comes from Jonathan Bartlett, Global News.
Thanks, Minister. This question is from Aaron MacArthur. Healthcare measures for recovery and care is one thing, but how does recriminalizing people with small amounts of illicit drugs help? People are not likely to seek help while they're dealing with the criminal justice system. Shouldn't you be doing both those things at the same time?
Well, again, I think the opportunity to take to use every tool that we can to try all different approaches in reducing the fear and stigma that prevent people from reaching out for help, conversations that people are having, public awareness campaigns, helping people access help through overdose prevention sites and other harm reduction measures. All of that taken together is a very important part of helping to increase the likelihood of somebody reaching out for help. And I think we all have a role to play in this. I encourage anybody who is watching and listening to visit helpstartshere.gov.bc.ca to see for themselves videos, firsthand expressions of what people have gone through to help better understand and know how we can support people who are seeking help at a time that is incredibly challenging, as Kim spoke to. We are going to continue not focused on any single solution, knowing that there's no magic bullet for this, but understanding that our focus on saving lives, on strengthening pathways to care, making it easier for people to access that care, using and implementing solutions that we are seeing are most effective. We will continue to do that work so that we can try to turn the tide on this incredibly devastating crisis.
One more question in the room before we go to the phones. Emily Javeski, Vista Radio, go ahead.
Hi, Minister. Thanks for taking my question. You mentioned earlier, I think, that the pilot program didn't quite reach the threshold for what you wanted to see out of this pilot. So can you talk a little bit more about that and what exactly weren't you seeing? And I guess also, what were some of the lessons learned here?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, the ability to test and to learn and to adjust was a core part of the pilot program. And we certainly did see some progress, again, shifting people away from the criminal justice system. We saw that the rate of possession offenses, the seizures of drugs did go down, especially in that initial first part of the decriminalization pilot. And it's really important to acknowledge, too, that we funded outreach positions in every single health authority, including the First Nations Health Authority, people who are working to support law enforcement and healthcare providers in their communities to help improve service navigation. We've seen the addition of new pathways to care and expanding the services that we have. Those are all an important part of it. And yet, decriminalization, again, it's at the end of the 3-year pilot, it is difficult, if not even possible, to attribute certain changes or increases directly to decriminalization. We want the focus to remain on people who are struggling with addictions. And that's why it's important to continue to expand the system of care and to support public awareness and in doing that and in a way that continues to help reduce stigma and help people access care.
And just to follow up, what were some of the conversations you were having with officials in Ottawa around this decision not to continue with the pilot?
Yeah, our partnership with the federal government is obviously a really important one, and we have been having conversations with them over not just the past month, as we, or month or weeks previously as we approached the January 31st end of the decriminalization pilot, but in previous months and years too, as we were working to amend and change. And I know that people have seen, we've undertaken a few course corrections and changed things as feedback from the public came forward, our conversations with police and enforcement, understanding what was happening out on the streets and what was happening in people's homes and how we could adjust in a way that helps us remain focused on that health first approach, but also take into account really important public considerations around public safety and perceptions of public safety and wanting to help people in any way that we can, but understanding people need to be comfortable and when they're out in their communities. And those are all part of the conversations that we've had with the federal government.
Next, we go to the phones. We hear from Penny Dufflos, CTV. Go ahead, Penny.
Is that the pilot didn't deliver the results that you'd hoped for, and you just mentioned a few of the things that you'd achieved, but what would it have taken to continue with this pilot project and to continue with the exemption? Like what was your kind of ideal scenario to keep this thing moving forward? I'm still kind of unclear on that.
Yeah, thank you. Again, the pilot was designed as a 3-year trial. And a number of different indicators that have been measured over the past 3 years. We do submit quarterly reports to Health Canada as required by them and are publicly available. And we've continued to work with the BC Center for Disease Control, for example, and some of the monitoring and evaluation directly involving people who use drugs. And I think, ultimately we were not seeing results in the way of, a huge increase in self-referrals to care, an increase in the use of certain kinds of services, and the public awareness and understanding that's necessary, creating all the conditions for success. But again, I think it's important to acknowledge when this decriminalization pilot started, it was at a time, deaths were at an all-time high. We know the devastating impact that is having on people, and it's a responsibility and an obligation for us to work together with partners to consider all of the different approaches and ways that we can undertake to help people who are struggling with addictions and the outcome that has on their lives, on their families' lives, on their communities, on their neighborhoods. So the decriminalization pilot may have ended, but again, coming back to today's announcement around the standing up of Access Central, the work that we are doing to coordinate and provide faster, easier access for care, and continuing other services, other harm reduction services, continuing to expand the treatment and recovery system, adding more beds, standing up the opioid treatment access line. All of this work is part of strengthening and building out a complete system of substance use care and recovery.
Follow-up, Penny?
How much did public sentiment and concerns about public safety factor into this decision?
Public safety is obviously, it's a very important factor in so many different aspects of the toxic drug crisis and what we are seeing and witnessing and how people are feeling. It is very difficult to measure social disorder, for example, and a sense of public safety, but it's important to put it in context. We knew, and the Premier's been very clear, we were never going to return to the decriminalization pilot as it currently was when it first began, and we saw over time that course correction, that adjustment, those changes to limit or narrow the places where decriminalization of the possession of small amounts of illicit substances was going to be exempted from federal law. That's, again, knowing that the decriminalization pilot has ended, it's important, and we will continue to work with police, because taking that health first approach, knowing that police themselves are first responders, they often encounter a person for the first time in dealing with public drug use, for example, something that makes almost all of us feel uncomfortable and contributes to concerns that are very understandable and are very valid. Taken in context, moving forward to help the police with tools and other first responders with the tools and supports that they need to help move people on where there's no criminal intent, and police are using their judgment and their expertise, their discretion in those interactions with people. We'll continue to do that work with police while they obviously continue to retain the authorities that they have and their mission to uphold the laws and to protect the public.
Next question comes from Mark Page, Black Press. Mark, please go ahead.
Hi, Minister. Thanks for taking my question. Now, do you believe, is it your opinion, I want your opinion here, that people who are found with small amounts of illicit drugs should end up with a criminal record?
It's my belief that we need to take a health-first approach. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I want to get addicted to drugs. I want to use drugs today. I want this to become a lifelong problem, one that impairs my relationships, my employment, my housing, my ability to thrive and succeed like my neighbors and my friends and my colleagues. Nobody asks for that. That's why it's so important that we take a health-first approach and treat this as the public health emergency that it is. And at the same time, that we work together with the police on social disorder, on public drug use, and on other factors that are an important part of the way we live together in society here. I am encouraged by the work that we have done with the police, by the partnership that we have with them as enforcement agents, and being able to to shift away where it's appropriate from the criminal justice system to give people the chance to get connected to the supports they need, to get them on the road to recovery, and to help them return to a life that they may previously have had, and to live the life that they want to lead.
Follow up, Mark?
Right, but if somebody ends up with a criminal record for possessing, crack cocaine or methamphetamine or something like that, does that not make it more difficult for them to return to their previous life and become a productive member of society?
Well, I think we can all try to imagine what it would be like to be in somebody's shoes who is facing that, and knowing that a criminal record can affect your ability to travel, can affect your employment, can affect how the people around you feel about you. These are all serious things that people face, and for reasons, again, that nobody asked for in the first place, to struggle with addiction. Thinking of people who come into addiction by a pathway of pain medication or injuries on the job, thinking of people who are struggling with mental health issues in life and needing supports. That's why it's so important that we invest in every aspect of this continuum of care, right from the very beginning, in our schools, in our families, in our homes, adding supports and intervention and prevention for children, for youth, for families, right through to the ability for somebody to call a single line, an access central line, and be able to talk to somebody to get the help they need and get connected to the care that they need, adding beds, adding recovery services, helping people through what can, for some, is a lifelong journey and struggling with addiction, and being there to support them, and again, just treating this as the health-focused issue that it is.
Our next question comes from Andrea Wu, Globe and Mail. Go ahead, Andrea.
Andrea? Oh, hi. I wanted to follow up on a question that's being asked a couple of times already. I just want to make sure I understand. It's regarding the pilot not having delivered the results that we hope for. You mentioned that we're not seeing results in terms of self-referrals to care. So does that mean that the province is viewing decriminalization as a failure because there was no increase in people seeking out substance use supports? And if so, are there other metrics that we're looking at?
Again, it is a challenging it's a challenging place to measure when we have a very complex public health emergency. I'm just going to pause for a moment for the hospital. Thank you. Again, a very complex public health emergency with different approaches, policies, tools that are being used, and it is challenging to attribute changes that we're seeing to any one policy. But we know while decriminalization has had an impact, as I've already spoken on certain things, that by not achieving the outcome that we hoped within the 3-year pilot of seeing that a measurable decrease in stigma and fear and addiction that prevent people from accessing services, and public conversation around decriminalization that has become very challenging. And knowing that we want to take a health-first approach, we want to center and focus our work on the people who are facing substance use challenges, and to do that in a way that is supportive through interactions with the police, by increasing the number of supports and the availability for people, by building out a system of care and filling in those gaps as we've been discussing today. We want to pursue the approaches that show the greatest potential at being effective, and we won't stop doing that with a focus on saving lives and strengthening pathways to care.
Follow up? Sorry, Andrea, do you have a follow-up question?
I do. There are some who say that decriminalization was oversold, that it's an important tool in reducing the harms associated with criminalization for people who use drugs. And there is data showing that it led to a significant reduction in criminal justice encounters for possession. But it is a very limited intervention that was never going to address these bigger issues of addiction, of getting people into treatment, of the toxicity of the drug supply. And so in that sense, it was sort of set up to fail. And I'm hoping you can speak to some of the early promises, the early language around decriminalization, and whether you feel that messaging may have been a bit off.
Returning to the original intent of the decriminalization pilot to reduce the fear, the judgment, the shame, the stigma that people have in reaching out for help. It is an obstacle, and that's well known and it's well documented in the literature and in other jurisdictions. By undertaking a decriminalization pilot, one that was designed with the input of police, with the input of stakeholders and care providers, that was thoughtful in its approach, and then implemented. And I would say there's probably never a perfect time or a perfect set of conditions to undertake a pilot like this, but I'm proud of the fact that we did try. And I think it's important, again, to acknowledge the seriousness of this public health emergency, and knowing that carefully designed pilot, and one where we are monitoring and evaluating. You've seen the course corrections that we've made along the way. It was a very well-intentioned attempt to add one more tool to help increase access to care, to help people seek the help that they need at a time when they need it most. With the decriminalization pilot ending, though, we continue our work. We continue this work of adding treatment and recovery beds, continuing to expand the intervention and supports, continuing to expand harm reduction services, and undertaking everything that we can to save lives, to help to build up and increase access on those pathways to care, acknowledging that each person's journey is different. It will look different for people, and we want to be there when they need the help at the time that they ask for it, which is what Access Central is all about.
Next question comes from Ashley Joanneau, Canadian Press. Go ahead, Ashley.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm just wondering to what extent you think the decriminalization was to blame for the record drug deaths that BC saw in 2023 after the program had started.
I'm sorry, could you just repeat the question? I just missed the middle part there.
Yeah, I'm just wondering to what extent you think decriminalization was to blame for the record drug deaths that BC had in 2023.
Well, again, it's very difficult to attribute the overdose death numbers to any single factor. But we have seen in 2023 and in 2024, and we expect to see in 2025, again, a decrease in overdose deaths. And that's encouraging, but it's not enough. We want to continue, of course, to drive down those numbers, and that's why we'll continue with the work that we are doing in expanding the full continuum of care, filling in the gaps, making it easier for people to access the help that they need.
Follow up, Ashley?
So if I understand things correctly, the program will officially come to an end on the 31st, because that is when the current agreement with Health Canada ends. What are you doing to actually inform user groups or the community more broadly about what's coming?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So we have just over 2 weeks before the decriminalization pilot officially will end. That's why it's important for me to be standing here and talking to the public about that upcoming change. And I am working closely, of course, with the Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General, with their ministry, and together reaching out to the police, working with them as obvious partners, but also speaking with stakeholders, with health authorities in the upcoming transition. It is important to take that time for people to prepare for changes that will be coming, and for us to continue listening and hearing about any challenges that are being faced so that we can make the appropriate changes and set things in motion for the smoothest transition possible.
Next question, Fran Yainer, Northern Beat.
Well, thanks for taking my question. Hi, Minister. I'm just wondering, addictions experts, even Bonnie Henry in her 2019 PHO report, recommended decrim be part of like a multi-pillar drug strategy, education, prevention, treatment, and in the case of Portugal, which even Henry referenced, reintegration into society. I'm just wondering, do you think that decrim failed because those pillars were not in place to support it? The
situation in Portugal is a bit different than British Columbia. And again, there's There are comparisons we can draw from how things have been undertaken in Portugal, but it's really important that we made and designed our decriminalization pilot here in British Columbia, taking into account the context here, taking into account factors like a rapidly changing toxic drug supply. For example, I value Dr. Henry's advice, and that's an important part of the design of the decriminalization pilot, and being able to make the adjustments that we've made. We don't make public policy in a vacuum, of course, and we want to make the best, most informed, evidence-driven decisions, and we make that in context of public awareness and the perspectives that we have heard loudly and clearly from communities, why we made some of the changes that we did in 2024, for example. Now with the decriminalization pilot coming to an end, it's important for all of stakeholder groups to understand, how we feel about what worked and what didn't work. Our reporting to the federal government will also come to an end as the decriminalization pilot ends, and we will be able to produce a final report that, of course, will be publicly available. And I am certain that there are, a number of different academic groups and people who have been involved in decriminalization, not just in British Columbia, but in other jurisdictions, who will have much to say. We're going to learn from this. We've adapted along the way. We're going to continue to use those learnings as we move forward.
Follow-up, Fran?
Yeah, thanks. Even in BC's application or the criteria that it had to meet with Health Canada, treatment was supposed to be in place to support decrim, which obviously isn't the case even now. So if the point was to move people from the criminal system into treatment, and this is an experimental program because it's being implemented unlike anywhere else without all these other supports. I guess I'm following up on Mary and Andrea. It's like, what data did your ministry collect to measure whether this experimental program and how it was being implemented was achieving the public policy goals? Like, you reference, we've talked about the arrests going down, which is obvious if it's not being criminalized anymore. Self-referrals, can you give us what data was actually being collected, and how did that? It seems a little facile to say it was complex, and so we don't have any data. And what do the data reveal?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So you can see firsthand in the reports that we have submitted to Health Canada, the different indicators that have been used, the data that's been collected and submitted all along the way, some of which I have spoken about, and is all there. And again, as the decriminalization pilot comes to an end with the final report coming out, there'll be that synthesis and analysis of those data. And that's been an important factor, an important consideration in this work. And I'm happy to follow up with you, Fran, with more background information about that.
We have time for one more question today. To anybody still on the line hoping for a question, we will be getting in touch to make sure that you have the information you need. Our last question today goes to Amelia McHour, Radio Canada. Amelia, please go ahead.
Hi, Minister. Thank you for taking my question. I was wondering, Minister, there was a pilot that was similar in Oregon, and they also did the same thing you did today, just walking back on decrim. And a lot of experts were saying that one of the things that didn't work out was the fact that we didn't have enough treatment beds and services, and not enough, I guess, good ways to redirect people that need a treatment. All of these going at the same time as decrim. So do you feel like we were in the same kind of pickle?
There are a few important differences between what happened in Oregon and how we undertook it in BC. In Oregon, it was a legislative decision. Ours was always designed as a time-limited trial, as a pilot that had evaluation and monitoring built into it so that we could learn and adapt as we went along. We know that having support present for people, treatment and recovery options, the ability to access like Access Central that we're talking about today as a really important part of connecting people to care. As I am often reminded by people in recovery, the opposite of addiction is connection. And being able to connect people in every way possible through harm prevention services, through awareness campaigns, through conversations with family, friends, coworkers, by making it easier for people to access help is absolutely essential. That's why we've continued that work. That's why we've built 760 treatment and substance use beds over the past several years. It's why we've introduced the opioid treatment access line. It's why we're building out Road to Recovery across the province. It's why we're building foundry centers, using integrated child and youth care teams, and all of these different approaches to help intervene, to help prevent, to help connect people to when they need it and are ready for it, detox services, withdrawal management, treatment, and all of the recovery and aftercare. Our commitment to building out that system has not changed with the end of this pilot, and we will continue to focus on the people who are struggling with addiction and taking a health-first approach to this public health emergency.
Follow-up, Amelia?
Yes, please. Minister, you're saying that it's a health-first approach. If we look at data by October 2025, we had the lowest rate of a death from illicit drugs since 2019. So I'm just wondering if you could explain why walking back on decriminalization when we see the lowest rate in death from illicit drugs. Is it because of public discourse that's winning over people actually dying less from drugs? Like I just need to trying to understand the decision today.
Yeah, it is an obligation, I feel, of government to undertake and consider any tool that we can, any option that we have to help separate people from the illicit drug supply, help make it easier for people to access the care and the support that they need. And decriminalization was a time-limited trial. It was a pilot designed to test some of that, to add to the suite of policies and tools that are out there. As we've talked about at length today, we don't feel that it met the results or the outcomes that we had hoped to see. And rather than continue, in some places, really difficult conversations, it is, in my mind, much better to keep that focus on people and on the policies, the tools that we have, that we know are effective, that we know are working, and that enable us to continue to put a person at the center of all of this, to continue to focus on an individual who is struggling with addiction so that they know it's okay to reach out for help, and that when they do, help is here. Everybody's recovery journey looks different. There is no one set of tools or one single pathway that will work for people. And that's why we will continue to implement and consider and implement anything that we know. And we know that there are many strategies that we're using now that are effective. We're going to continue that. I'm very grateful again to all the partners that we have had throughout the decriminalization experiment and this pilot, where we know that without that support and help in designing a decriminalization pilot and being able to evaluate it and being able to implement it, we wouldn't be where we are today, having learned what we have and moving forward, continuing to build out and strengthen that system of care that people are depending on every single day.
Thank you very much. That concludes today's event.
You have been listening to BC's Health Minister Josie Osborne issuing an update on the province's decriminalization pilot. As you heard, the province will end the pilot and will not seek to extend it after January 31st, when it is set to end. The province says that it did not provide the results that they were looking for. They're asking people who are dealing with addictions to seek support through Access Central. Much more coverage of this today on CBC. You can always go to our website anytime as well, cbc.ca/BC. I'm Michelle Elliott. Thank you for watching. Have a good afternoon.